You're listening to the Boss Yourself First podcast, Season 3, Episode 2. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Boss Yourself First. I'm so glad you're here today, and especially for this conversation. If you've been following along, you know, in Episode 1, we are in a new season. Last week, we talked about permission to grieve. So we're expanding that. This is kind of part 2, but it's same but different, but not really. Connected, let's put it that way. So I shared a little bit about the last few years, last time on the podcast, the loss, the change, the growth, and we explored what it means to give ourselves permission to grieve. Well, this episode is going to, like I say, kind of expand on that a little bit. And thank you so much already for some of the notes, the reflections that you shared. I really appreciate you guys coming back strong with me to support this season. I want to expand a little bit more on that today. Loss has a sneaky way of making us want to pull away from others, even when what we actually need is connection. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in this episode. We're basically saying it's the permission to connect, but I especially want to look at it in the context of grief. And remember, when I say grief, we're not just talking about losing a loved one, which certainly it can be that. In fact, I think that's probably the first way we think about grief, but we experience moments of loss in our everyday lives. Think about losing out on a job, maybe not even getting an interview for a job you were excited about, having to move from a beloved apartment, or maybe a friend got a new job and they're leaving town, or missing out on a project you hope to lead. Loss happens and we notice. And sometimes we close in and try to protect ourselves from further hurt. It's not comfortable. So let me say this up front. This is not a guilt trip. It is not a just put yourself out there kind of pep talk. It's a real, honest way to look at connection and why it feels so hard when we're grieving, and why giving ourselves permission to connect, even imperfectly, can be one of the most healing and courageous choices we can make. So let's start with a little bit of neuroscience. I already threw a little bit of it at you around the whole neuro pathways of belonging, how important that is to us when we get rejected. Same neural pathways in our brains that light up when we experience grief. So a little bit further into my geek out journey on how our beautiful, amazing, complicated brains work. So recent research tells us that grief doesn't just affect our emotions, it literally reshapes our brain activity. A 2021 study in Neuroimage Clinical looked at people experiencing acute grief and found heightened activity in the amygdala. That's the part of the brain responsible for detecting threats and processing fear. You may have heard of the amygdala hijack, where it kind of shuts down the other parts of your brain and activates that fight, flight, or freeze moment. When we experience acute grief, that gets activated. I think we talked a little bit about it last time, that our brains code the feelings that accompany grief as threats. Connection also can be noticed by our brains as vulnerability and be associated with risk. So it does require a certain amount of vulnerability if you think about it. Even just reaching out to a friend or showing up in a small group or answering, "How are you?" honestly, that takes courage. And our grieving brains just may not feel ready for it. Here's the thing. This is not weakness. It's biology. Your brain is trying to protect you. But sometimes in protecting us from discomfort, it also cuts us off from the exact things that help us heal. But there's good news. And science backs up the good news as well. In 2023, a meta-analysis published in The Lancet pulled together decades of research. It was a longitudinal study on grief and social connection. The conclusion: strong social ties significantly reduce the risk of depression, anxiety, and even physical health issues after major loss. There's a reason that phrase, "dies of a broken heart," is a thing. We can have physical manifestations of our grief. Absolutely. So let me say this again, though. It's not how tough or how put together you are that predicts how you cope with grief. It's how connected you stay. Let's not lose sight of that. Connection doesn't erase grief, but it holds us steady as we move through it. The grieving brain isn't broken. It is trying to learn adapt, and reorient in a world that's missing someone or something that's important to us. Social connection, though, provides neurological and emotional scaffolding, like a framework almost, that helps this learning happen and reduces our distress along that remapping that our brains are trying to do and gives us moments of relief. I've done a little bit of research on this, as you know that I will, because I love it. And the curious mind wants to know, right? Well, in her work, The Grieving Brain, Mary Frances O'Connor, it's a really powerful book, by the way, emphasizes that loneliness amplifies grief-related neural distress and that openness to connection, even when it feels hard, can interrupt or disrupt that cycle of isolation and despair. Because think about it, we're deep in the feelings of grief. We want to isolate, which gives us more focus and more attention on our feelings of grief, right? So we isolate more. So we focus more on those feelings of grief. Whereas connection, just those opportunities to break that cycle, can allow our brains the space to remap. And just so you know, connection doesn't have to mean big, performative kinds of social events or forced positivity. You don't have to pretend you're all good. It can be as simple as just sending a text that's very low level, low risk, and small reward, but their reward is there. But sending a text, sitting with a friend in silence, joining a group that feels safe, or maybe rejoining a group that feels safe, sharing honestly with someone who's not going to step in and try and fix it or fix you. Remember, you're not broken. But this is where permission comes in. We often have to give ourselves permission to reach out, even when it feels awkward or uncomfortable. I think sometimes we buy into the idea that, oh, I'm just in such a down place that no one's going to want to be around me. Kind of Eeyore-ish, if I could reference a little Winnie the Pooh there, but don't buy that. Give yourself permission to connect. You know, when I talk about grief pulling us towards isolation, I'm not just speaking from personal experience, even though I've shared some of my experiences recently in the past couple of years that have definitely brought up that desire to isolate a little bit. But this is not just a personal individual challenge. It is a global one, my friends. In fact, many researchers and mental health leaders are now referring to loneliness as a public health crisis. Here in the US, the Surgeon General has spoken repeatedly and extensively about how loneliness impacts and increases rates of depression, anxiety, and even physical conditions. It's similar to O'Connor's work, some of the same findings. But those physical conditions, maybe we think that you get a little run down, but physical conditions like heart disease and weakened immune systems. So catch this, chronic loneliness has been shown to be as harmful to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Yeah, let that sink in for just a sec. It's not just about feeling sad or feeling isolated. It's about how human connection literally protects and strengthens our minds and bodies. And it's not unique to the US. Recently in Japan, the issue became so significant, and it has just caught my attention the other day, but it happened in 2021. The government of Japan appointed a minister of loneliness, which I kind of feel like maybe is flip the script and make it minister of connectedness, but to each their own, but to address social isolation. This followed alarming increases in Japan, specifically in suicide rates and mental health struggles, particularly among women and younger adults. And I think coming in at 2021, it was probably a lot of that came to the attention during the pandemic. But this minister's role focuses on fostering connection and supporting mental health and creating programs and initiatives that help people rebuild social ties. So if entire governments are recognizing how essential connection is to the well-being of their people, it tells us something really powerful, which you probably already knew, but I feel like having that experience that you're not alone in the knowing, we're wired for connection, my friends. We are designed to belong, and grief can make us forget that. And I want to say this gently because I know how raw grief can feel. And remember, we're not talking about always a massive loss of a loved one. Could be a small loss that you feel deeply. But connection often begins with the mindset of being open to connection. Remember the difference between kind of closing and opening. So it's not about forcing ourselves into conversations or even showing up before we're ready. But sometimes without realizing it, we send out signals that say, yep, I'm closed. We avoid eye contact. We leave messages unanswered. We quietly put up the do not disturb sign. I have to show you. Can I reach it from here? I cannot, but I got a do not disturb sign for my door, just so that people in my household, because I work from home, I coach from home, I record from home, will know when it's okay to walk in and when it's not. So sometimes we send out those signs when we're dealing with our feelings, particularly in this instance, grief. Again, it's understandable. Our brains are trying to protect us, but healing connection starts with a small internal shift, a quiet, intentional choice to say, I'm open to connection. I'm choosing connection. It might feel a little uncomfortable, but I can choose it. And I might not know what that's going to look like, but I'm willing to soften the walls just a little bit. It's not really about being ready for deep, vulnerable conversations overnight. We're not going for that, but it is about creating the possibility. And if that feels like a big leap, I have a resource for you, my friends. It's something that is a work of love and compassion coming out of my work, but also for my clients. It's a gentle, short, guided meditation for openness to connect that I recorded specifically for you. This version was just for you, even though I have shared the practice with multiple clients. And of course, it's one that I use myself. It's designed to support you in softening the edges of isolation, not forcing connection, but just preparing your heart and your mind to receive it and noticing the opportunities as they arise. So you can find this at the Boss Yourself First website at bossyourselffirst.com/resources. It's free to you. And it's something, again, that I have personally used and shared with clients who are feeling lost or in a transition or just feeling disconnected. It's a quiet first step. It's a permission slip. I'm allowed to feel uncertain. I'm allowed to take this at my own pace, but I'm also allowed to hope and look for connection. I hope you find that helpful. Like I said, I have used it and I reconnected with it recently, and it just changed my mindset. It really did the work that I needed it to do. And I hope it does that for you as well. And if it does and you try it, I would love to hear about it. Okay, continuing on, as we continue to look at our desire to protect, our desire to isolate versus what we really need, which is connection and what can really help us heal. I shared with you last time, the past few years, I've been in and out of that tension between knowing the power of connection and the urge to protect and isolate. After losing mom, supporting my dad through his health journey, and recovering from my own injuries, there were days when isolation just felt easier. There were moments when answering a text even felt overwhelming. And even as someone who teaches connection and self-leadership, I still felt the pull and sometimes still feel the pull to retreat. And sometimes, you know what? That is okay. Solitude is necessary. It's important. It's worth protecting as well. There is healthy solitude. But when solitude slides into loneliness, that's when the danger creeps in. That's when it becomes detrimental to our well-being. As I mentioned earlier, loneliness is a global crisis, and sometimes it's even called a silent epidemic. And grief of any kind of loss leaves us more vulnerable to loneliness. In the frantic push and pull of supporting my mom and healing from my own injuries, managing and guiding my dad on his grief and health journey, I noticed how easily I could drift into isolation. But the moments I leaned into connection, even small ones, those were the moments that steadied me. It filled me up just a little bit when I felt so depleted. A side conversation with someone in the hospital about just ordinary stuff, what they were listening to, cute shoes they had on, just little side moments. A cup of tea with a friend, the honest, I'm not okay, but I'm here conversations, the quiet presence of people who didn't need to fix me, just partner with me. That's the power of connection. And it starts, my friends, with permission. Permission to invite people in, permission to appreciate the benefits of connecting, permission to leave isolation, even if you don't feel socially acceptable. So if you're walking through grief right now, or if someone you love is, I want to invite you into this simple, tangible practice this week. So I've already given you access to the meditation. That's kind of goes to the mindset. This is something simple that you can actually tangibly do to take action around our topic. So I call this the connection check-in, and it goes like this. Identify your safe people. And to be honest, you don't even have to be in a season of grief to act on this. Go ahead and start noticing, who are your safe people? That just one or two people that you trust, people who've shown up for you in the past or who you think might, if you let them, if you allow them. There's no pressure for big vulnerability here. Just notice who feels safe and who creates space for you to show up as you are with no expectations of sharing deeply or contributing to conversations. I'm going to share a brief little story, which is deeply touching. So I'll try to keep it all together with you here in this space, but I know that I can be here with you honestly and authentically. So after Mom passed, we had an intense 10 days of her being in the hospital. 10 days where day 1, we got the cancer diagnosis. She passed away on day 10. So when I say intense, it was indeed intense. Right away, I put the word out to her siblings and said, hey, this is the news. It's not good. And if you want to see Mom this side of heaven, it's probably time to get here. And they did. But one of her siblings couldn't. Because she had COVID. She had something respiratory going on, and she was worried about adding to Mom's illness or getting her siblings sick as well, and also all the people who would be involved in the flight out here. Either way, she couldn't come at the time, and she actually decided to come once she was better. It was after Mom had passed, but she came anyway. This was Mom's youngest sister, who's actually my age. She came anyway, and she was one of my safe people. She came and she didn't make me talk about anything I didn't want to talk about. And she helped me. She helped me do just normal things, returning some stuff we'd gotten for Mom to help her through that she didn't need and never got a chance to use. They were just helping me make some decisions around the life celebration and some things like that. She just was a gentle presence that created space, a supportive space, but not I'm going to fix it and make you to feel better and make you laugh and you try and feel things that you're not ready to feel yet. Identify your safe people, whether you need them right now or not. Know who they are. And honestly, I'm going to push this a little bit further. This isn't necessarily part of the check-in, but think about who you provide that to. Who are you a safe person for? This is some food for thought. Okay, step 2. So 1, identify your safe people. Step 2, choose a small step. What feels manageable? This is when you are in that season of loss. What feels manageable? The answer to that may be nothing feels manageable. But choose to do the smallest little thing. It could simply be a text. Hey, I'm thinking of you. Or an invitation to coffee. I think a lot of times when someone has a loss, let's say that your coworker was let go. Your company was downsizing. It's happening a lot these days. And they were let go. And you're like, I don't know how to be around them without making them feel bad. Or if you're the person who was let go, I think anybody from work is just going to trigger all these feelings of anger and loss and resentment. So maybe just a simple, hey, I miss seeing you, just to connect and let them know it's okay to talk to you. Let them know that you're not mad at them. And you might be surprised at the kind of support you get. Same thing if you're experiencing the loss of a loved one. A lot of times people will say, hey, let me know what I can do. I'm so sorry for your loss. Let me know how I can help. It's really hard to think of how someone else can help when you are feeling so incredibly overwhelmed. But if you are going to give yourself permission to seek connection, the smallest step. Hey, thanks so much for reaching out. I appreciate it. Maybe we can grab coffee next week. Something simple. Remember I said sometimes we send out signals that say, do not disturb, just to let people know it's okay to disturb. You're not disturbing. It's okay. Then name the permission you need. Maybe it's, I'm going to give myself permission to just be honest. When people say, how are you doing? And you say, oh, fine, as well as could be expected. Instead of just saying, I'm not great, but I know this is a season and I'm just taking the time that I need. It's just an honest answer. So maybe that's the permission you need, or giving yourself permission to show up imperfectly. You don't have to look all put together when you're not feeling all put together. Or maybe it is what we're talking and focusing on today, this permission to connect, even if you feel messy. Again, even if you feel not socially acceptable, permission to connect. And remember, in step 2, when we choose the smallest step, sometimes that's even duration. Sometimes it's not even connection with specific people, your safe people. Maybe it's just, I'm going to go circulate and be among people. Maybe I'm going to go and pick up my favorite coffee, and I'm just going to interact with the people in line and behind the counter for just a few minutes. And then I'm going to go home. But you're just going to increase that time that you're circulating a little bit every day. Building connection. Remember, it doesn't have to be deep and meaningful. Leaning into it just a little, it can make a world of difference. Your grieving brain might resist, but your healing heart will thank you. And of course, I want to be part of your connection circle too. I'm happy to connect with you. If this conversation, and I hope it does, I hope it resonates with you, not necessarily because I hope you're in grief, but as we know, we get plenty of opportunities to experience loss, even small losses. Please reach out. Please connect. You can share your story or your reflections because we can learn from you as well. Even your questions for future episodes at bossyourselffirst.com. And if you want more support on your permissions journey, whether it's around grief or growth or bossing yourself with compassion, you can find resources, my book, other ways to connect with me on my website. We were never meant to boss ourselves through life in isolation. We do it together, messy, imperfect, and brave. So wherever you are today, whether you're in the thick of loss, supporting someone who is, or just simply reflecting on your own sense of disconnection, I want to remind you that you have permission to connect. You don't have to wait until you feel put together. You don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to be willing. And I promise, connection may not fix everything, but it will hold you steady as you heal. Thanks for being here today, and thanks for choosing to show up exactly as you are. We'll keep walking this permission journey together, one honest, hopeful step at a time. Take care, my friends, and I'll see you next week on Boss Yourself First.